They smile at you while quietly despising you. Most men don't see it. They walk into the fantasy blinded by desire, thinking they're in control, thinking she likes them, maybe even admires them. They believe money buys affection, that attention equals respect. But what if I told you, the truth is far darker than you imagined? You're not her man. You're her transaction. And worse, you might be the man she secretly hates the most, because you remind her of the very thing she had to destroy in herself to survive. The modern world has made it easy for men to escape the pain of rejection. Don't want to risk heartbreak? Just pay for a body. Want to feel desired? Subscribe to an illusion. But behind that illusion is someone who's mastered the art of smiling without feeling, touching without connecting, loving without ever letting herself be loved. And men still fall for it. The tragedy isn't just that men are being used. It's that they willingly walk into a system where they pay to be emotionally discarded. They fund their own disrespect, all while believing they're being worshipped. But here's the question no one asks. If sex work is just business, why do so many of these women carry a quiet resentment toward the men they serve? Let's peel back the layers and expose the contempt that hides behind the smile. Number 1. The strip club mindset. Men are wallets, not people. Step into a strip club after midnight, and you'll enter a world that runs on illusion. Music thumping, lights dim just enough to blur the truth. Here, men are kings, or so they think. But to the women who work these rooms, you're not a king. You're a wallet with legs, a number on a leaderboard, a temporary jackpot. They've studied you, your posture, your insecurities, your tells. They know what to say, when to touch your shoulder, how long to look into your eyes before you start believing it's real. But none of it is. It's not intimacy, it's a finely tuned sales funnel. From drink, to dance, to private room. Every move is calibrated to drain you emotionally and financially. And here's the twisted part, many of these women take pride in it. Not because they enjoy you, but because outsmarting you gives them a sense of control in a world where they once had none. It's not attraction, it's survival, and sometimes revenge. To them, your vulnerability isn't endearing. It's exploitable. You're not a man to be loved. You're a mark to be mined. And once you leave, once your card is declined or your energy fades, you become exactly what they always knew you were, replaceable. Another name, another face, another man who thought he was special. But you were never special. You were predictable. Number 2. OnlyFans and the death of respect. The internet gave them power. Platforms like OnlyFans didn't just open the door, it tore the walls down. Now, any woman with a phone and a camera can build an empire off male desperation. But with that power came a quiet shift in psychology, one that few men are willing to acknowledge. It's not just that they're selling pictures. It's not just that they're monetizing attention. It's that the act of selling intimacy without feeling anything has taught them one thing over and over again. Most men are pathetic. Every message they get from a lonely man begging for attention, every tip for a wink, every request that ends with "thank you, goddess," it stacks up. And after a while, it doesn't feel like validation. It feels like power over weak men. Contempt grows where respect used to live. And the worst part, the more you pay, the less they respect you. Because deep down they know, if you had confidence, if you had emotional strength, if you had real options, you wouldn't be in their inbox. You wouldn't need to buy their attention. You'd be out there living, connecting, earning respect from women who actually value you. But you're not. So they smile, they collect your money, and then they talk behind your back. They trade screenshots, they laugh at your fantasies, and they remind each other just how easy it is to manipulate a man who needs validation more than he values himself. Respect? That died the moment you typed. How much for a custom? Number 3. They can't connect emotionally, even if they try. It's easy to say they don't care, that they're cold, ruthless, manipulative, and maybe they are. But that didn't happen overnight. No one's born emotionally detached. That's learned. That's built brick by brick, usually from pain, betrayal, and deep-rooted trauma. Many women in sex work didn't start that way. They were once just like everyone else, searching for connection, craving validation, hoping love would fix the wounds. But something along the way broke them, and instead of healing, they adapted. They learned how to survive in a world that punishes softness and rewards control. So they turned off the part of themselves that wanted to feel. They trained their emotions to shut down on command, because it's easier to fake pleasure than to risk more pain, easier to act than to trust. And once you turn off that switch, it rarely comes back on. So what happens when they try to love someone? When they find a man who's actually kind, patient, consistent, it feels wrong. It feels boring. It feels unsafe. Because vulnerability reminds them of the very moments they swore never to relive. That's why so many relationships with sex workers fall apart. Not because men are weak, but because these women never learned how to be emotionally present. They don't know what loyalty is, because in their world, loyalty is just another lie men told before they left. So even when a good man stands in front of them, they can't see him. They don't trust him. They don't believe him. And eventually they push him away, because love requires openness, and they've been closed for years. Number 4. Why sex became a weapon. There's a reason so many women in sex work have stories soaked in trauma. And the most disturbing truth is this: what was once taken from them without consent becomes the very thing they now use to gain control. When a child is abused, something sacred is stolen: safety, innocence, trust. But the mind, desperate to survive, does something brutal. It rewrites the meaning of that experience. It says, if I choose to give this away, then maybe it was never really stolen. So instead of running from what hurt them, they run toward it. Not for pleasure, not for power, but to reclaim a narrative that once left them powerless. And in that twisted rewrite, sex stops being sacred. It becomes a tool, a weapon, a way to say, you can't hurt me anymore. I'm in control now. But control without healing is hollow. They start to believe sex doesn't matter, that it's just flesh, just noise, just a transaction. And the more they repeat that lie, the easier it becomes to sell it to others and to themselves. But here's the tragedy. When you minimize sex to avoid pain, you also destroy its potential for real connection. You kill the bond, the magic, the intimacy. And worst of all, you start seeing people not as human beings, but as targets, as wallets, as toys, as validation machines. So yes, they offer sex, but behind that offer is a history of wounds, carefully covered in confidence, wrapped in detachment and sold to the highest bidder, not because they enjoy it, but because they're still trying to forget what it once meant. Number 5. Why they'll never love the man who pays. You can give her the world, pay her rent, shower her with gifts, defend her against judgment. But if you're paying for her body, you will never have her heart. There's a harsh truth buried beneath every thank you, baby, and every fake moan. She doesn't respect you. Not because you're cruel, not because you're unattractive, but because in her eyes, you're weak enough to accept a version of her that's for sale. And here's what most men don't realize. The more you accept, the less she respects you. If you tolerate her sex work, she doesn't see you as supportive. She sees you as spineless. If you accept that other men are allowed access to what's supposed to be intimate, she doesn't think you're open-minded. She thinks you're soft. Because deep down she knows a man with real strength, real purpose, real standards would never be okay with it. She can fake the pleasure, fake the loyalty, even fake the I love you. But she's watching, testing, measuring, and every time you fail to draw the line, you fall in her eyes. She might stay, she might even move in with you, but it won't be love, it'll be convenience. And the day she finds someone she actually respects, someone who doesn't beg for attention or pay for presents, she'll be gone. Because love requires admiration, and admiration dies the moment a woman realizes you're the man who bought what no man should ever have to pay for. Number 6. The men who buy the fantasy, and why they hate themselves. He scrolls through her photos late at night, heart racing, mind spinning. He tells himself it's harmless, just entertainment, just a way to unwind. But deep down, something darker is eating at him, a quiet shame he can't name. Because he knows the truth. He's not paying for her body. He's paying to forget that he doesn't believe he deserves love. Men who chase sex work aren't monsters. Many are broken. Men who grew up in cold homes. Men raised without affection. Men who were taught to suppress their emotions and man up until they forgot how to feel altogether. So when the real world demands connection, when a real woman wants depth, patience, emotional presence, they shut down. It's too hard, too exposing, too risky. Why risk rejection when you can pay for validation? That's what makes the illusion so addictive. She smiles on command, responds when you tip, moans when you pay. You get the illusion of intimacy without the vulnerability it requires. But over time, the fantasy becomes a prison. Because the more you chase that feeling, the more you remind yourself that you can't earn it in the real world. You're not her lover. You're not her man. You're a customer, a number. an escape hatch for someone who doesn't want to be seen. And eventually you start hating yourself, not just for what you're doing, but for what it means. Because deep down, you know this isn't who you're meant to be. You were built for more than begging, more than tipping, more than hiding behind screens and pretending that money makes you desirable. You don't need a fantasy, you need healing. But healing doesn't come cheap. Number 7. The transactional trap when two emptinesses collide. What happens when a woman who can't feel meets a man who can't connect? What happens when both sides enter a relationship not for love, but to escape their own wounds? You don't get romance. You get dependency. You don't get trust. You get tolerance. And eventually, you don't get anything at all. This is the trap most people never talk about. The illusion that two broken people can fill each other's gaps. But instead of healing, all they do is lean on each other's dysfunction. She gives him the illusion of desire. He gives her the illusion of control. Neither one truly loves the other, because neither one loves themselves. The sex feels intense, the high's addictive, the attachment obsessive, but none of it is real. It's just two people afraid of being alone, afraid of being seen, afraid of facing what they've buried deep inside. And worst of all, they call it love. But how can there be love where there is no respect? How can there be connection when both parties are wearing masks? He hides his desperation behind compliments and cash. She hides her emptiness behind seduction and control. In the end, all that's left is resentment. He feels used. She feels trapped. They cling to each other, not out of passion, but out of fear. It's not love. It's survival, masquerading as intimacy. And the longer they stay in it, the more they both lose their ability to experience the real thing. If it ever comes. Number 8. Why they can't respect you, even if you love them. You might think that loving her deeply will make her change, that your patience, your protection, your unwavering support will earn her trust. But here's the brutal reality. Love doesn't create respect. Standards do. A woman who sells herself, whether through OnlyFans, strip clubs, or transactional intimacy, has built her world around power dynamics. She gives the illusion of submission, but beneath it lies sharp calculation. She studies men, not to connect, but to categorize. And when she finds a man who tolerates everything, who accepts her lifestyle, who looks past the men, the lies, the emotional void, she doesn't see him as strong. She sees him as safe to manipulate. Because in her mind, a man who allows himself to be one option among many isn't strong enough to protect, to lead, or to command her respect. She may keep you around. You might even live together. But when she looks at you, there's no fire, no admiration, no hunger, because respect can't exist without boundaries. And if you've never drawn a line, she's already stepped over you. And here's the part most men never see coming. She'll lose interest the moment you stop resisting, the moment you understand her work, the moment you try to prove you're the good guy who accepts everything. Because in her eyes, the good guy is the weak guy. She doesn't want understanding. She wants strength. And she'll test you again and again, emotionally, physically, sexually, just to see if you'll finally say, enough. But if you never do, she'll leave. Or worse, she'll stay and quietly destroy every ounce of self-respect you still have. And the saddest part? You'll think it's your fault, when the truth is, she never respected you to begin with. Number 9. Shame is necessary. Why society is collapsing without it. You've heard the slogans, don't judge, live your truth, let people do whatever makes them happy. But behind those slogans is a slow, silent collapse of values, of responsibility, of human depth. We've replaced accountability with applause, shame with hashtags. Now if you dare to question someone's choices, no matter how self-destructive, you're labeled toxic, judgmental, or worse, shaming. But here's the truth no one wants to say out loud. Shame has a purpose. Guilt, shame, and regret aren't your enemies, they're signals. Internal alarms telling you when something is out of alignment with who you're meant to be. When you lie, cheat, degrade yourself, and feel nothing, you haven't evolved, you've disconnected. And that disconnection is killing us. When we stop feeling shame for turning love into currency, when we celebrate behaviors that once required healing, when we normalize what should have been questioned, we don't create freedom. We create numbness. And a numb society is a lost society. Because shame, when it's earned, leads to reflection. And reflection leads to growth. But remove shame, and all you're left with is ego, chaos, and a culture of people too fragile to face their own choices. So no, calling out a broken system isn't shaming. It's sanity. And maybe, just maybe, it's the first step toward reclaiming what we've lost: self-respect, integrity, and the courage to want something real. Number 10. Sexual market manipulation. Slut-shaming versus simp-shaming. Most people think slut-shaming comes from men. But if you look closely, you'll see the truth. It's women who do it the most, and for a calculated reason. Because in the sexual marketplace, every woman is trying to protect one thing: price. If one woman gives sex too easily, too publicly, without loyalty or standards, it lowers the perceived value for everyone else. So other women react. Not out of morality, but out of competition. She's making it harder for me to secure resources. So they attack, whisper behind her back, call her names, not to elevate virtue, but to protect position. It's the same with men. Simp-shaming exists for a reason. When a man gives money, attention, or emotional commitment to a woman without earning her respect or loyalty, he's not just humiliating himself, he's damaging the value of masculinity. Other men see it, they feel it, and they react with shame. Because if one man makes provision too cheap, the rest have to pay more for less. So yes, it's ugly, but it's real. Slut-shaming and simp-shaming are forms of intersexual warfare. Women police women's sexual access. Men police men's resource distribution, not because we're evil, but because competition lives beneath the surface of all connection. And when connection becomes currency, the market always finds a way to regulate itself through shame, through pressure, through silent rules that most people follow, without even realizing why. This isn't about right or wrong. It's about power, and who controls it. Number 11. Why women attack each other more than men do. Let's break another myth. Women support women. You've heard it, seen it on hashtags, believed it in theory, but in the real world, it falls apart fast. Because when resources, attention, or men are limited, women don't band together, they turn on each other. Quietly, sharply, strategically. The prettier woman gets more judgment. The more successful woman gets more silence. The more desired woman, she gets the worst of it: rumors, sabotage, fake smiles with knives behind the back. Not because she's evil, but because she's competition. This is what evolutionary psychologists call intersexual competition. Unlike men, who often fight physically then bond, women compete emotionally, socially, and verbally. It's subtle, it's psychological, and it's vicious. They won't punch each other, but they'll exclude, they'll shame, they'll isolate, especially when one woman threatens the hierarchy, by standing out, by winning, by refusing to play small. That's why women in the same friend group rarely celebrate each other's success. That's why female workplaces are often tense beneath the surface. And that's why, in the sex work industry, the attacks come from within, not just from outside. The moment a woman threatens another woman's access to men, money, or validation, the claws come out. And here's the final truth: female empowerment only works in environments without competition. The moment one woman has more power, more beauty, more leverage, the sisterhood crumbles. Because underneath the slogans and solidarity is a silent war for value. And not every woman walks away unscarred. And the lie that keeps you powerless: you thought she cared. You thought your money meant something. You thought your patience, your love, your open-mindedness would make her choose you over the rest. But here's the truth no man wants to admit. She never saw you as a man. She saw you as a transaction, a soft place to land, a wallet dressed up in compliments and hope. You weren't the escape from her darkness. You were just another tool to keep the illusion alive. Another man pretending this wasn't about power, pretending this was love. And the more you tried to prove yourself, the lower you sank in her eyes. That's why sex workers hate men, not because we're evil, but because we keep showing up weak, apologetic, desperate. We feed their cynicism. We prove their trauma right. And worst of all, we pay for the privilege. But you can walk away from this, not bitter, not broken, not filled with rage, but aware of what's real, aware of what's manipulation, aware of who you're becoming when you trade self-respect for attention. Because at the end of the day, no matter how beautiful she is, no matter how convincing her smile, no matter how lonely you feel, you are not here to be tolerated. You are here to be respected. And the moment you start acting like it, the illusion shatters.